Hello, this is Janet from janetsandberg.com, and you're listening to the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast, the weekly show that talks to peers and professionals who open up about their darkest moments when they felt like ending it all, why they didn't, and how they transformed their lives in order to triumph over the darkness and despair. Please remember to subscribe if you'd like to hear more inspiring stories. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast. I am your host, Janet Sandberg, and today we are joined by the wonderful Heather Warren. So, Heather, take a minute, introduce yourself to the people who are listening to us today.
Okay, thank you, Janet, for having me on the podcast. My name is Heather Warren, and I'm a personal growth coach for heart-led women who have gone through sweet hell, yet still believe in love. So,
I love it.
so if anyone wants to go within, do some of the inner work, and recover their heart so they can live the life they want, then please reach out. I'm also a fur mom to a dog named Max. He's my baby, and a writer and a speaker and a foodie. I love food and I love film.
Oh, food and film, two of the best things out
Yes.
there. What's your favorite food? It's hard to
Oh.
ask that of a foodie, I know.
Oh my gosh. Well, from a health perspective, I love smoothies. It's kind of my inner child who likes a milkshake. So I can make combinations of smoothies, but I would say I really love curries, like anything.
Hmm.
And that came from when I was a kid living in Jamaica and growing up with my stepfather who's Jamaican. So anything that's jerk chicken, curry goat, curry chicken, anything like that, I really enjoy. I like spicy.
Awesome. And what's
Mhm.
your favorite film?
Oh, that's hard. I'm gonna say recently, I definitely would say I watched The Holdovers, which one I think it's winning
Yes,
awards and stuff.
it is.
So
Yes. I still
um
haven't seen it.
you haven't?
No,
Okay.
I want to, but I haven't yet.
It's very love. I would say I liked it that one and no, I'll just stick with that one. Um Partly because it was such based in the 1970s, such an
Mhm.
honest look at privilege and private schools, but the acting was just um very real, and you felt like you could really get a sense of the character. So I don't know how else to describe it without ruining
Hmm.
it, but I loved it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I heard a clip of an interview with Paul Giamatti, and he said that the guy who played like the main character student
Yes.
was
Okay.
actually just a student at the school they were filming at. He's not even an
Wow.
actor. And they were just like, you have the look, you have the vibe. Let's go with you. So maybe that's why it didn't feel like acting because he's not an
Ah,
actor.
that makes sense. That totally makes sense.
He's just a kid living that actual life. So,
You just wish that would happen to you, or somebody's like, I want you in a feature film.
right? So
Yeah.
interesting. Interesting.
Hmm.
Anyways,
Hmm.
thank you
Good
for
stuff.
being here today and for sharing your story with us. Let's get to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um,
Thank you.
Tell us what was going on in your life when you were wishing that you weren't living it.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'll give the background piece was I'd already broken up with my ex, and so I thought it was going to be one of these, we're trying to do it through a therapist and amicable endings, but it was one of these back and forth relationships. He had suffered from a brain injury a couple of years before we decided to end it. And it was just this ongoing having to deal with some of his mental health challenges. And I say that with compassion. I had compassion for him, and but there were also aspects of his personality that could have been seen as yellow flags
Mm.
at the relationship that seemed to get bigger over time. So probably after the seventh time of him saying he doesn't want to be in a relationship, and our therapist, we went to therapy and stuff, and I was like, wow, he really doesn't want to be in a relationship, so why am I even trying? So I'd said, I'm done. Like, I'm really done. I'm moving on. I'm going to start dating, and sort of just letting that know out of respect so he doesn't get shocked. Um, but that triggered something in him that whether it's possess, I would say it had a misogynistic quality to it. So it had a lens of, you know, he can't lose the woman, needs to possess the woman. So something got really triggered, and he became very upset and very jealous. And so when I did start dating somebody, he was reaching out to my mom and trying to say I'm an awful person. He was reaching out to my now husband at the time, was my boyfriend at the time, first person I started dating. He's reaching out saying, you know, be careful of her. And he's trying to spread all of these false accusations. And so I felt like I couldn't control any, like it was like I can't control how he's and he was a well-respected spiritual teacher in our community. So there was almost nobody knew what was happening. I was trying to
Right.
protect him with his mental health issues, and I was trying to be very respectful, and you know, we don't need people in the drama, and you know, all of these things,
Hmm.
right? So sometimes taking the higher road feels like you're getting silenced.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of people wouldn't see that side of him, and
Right.
wouldn't see, and I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to ruin his reputation. It seemed very immature. Um, and you know, we're trying to do this with a sense of love, but he just amped it up. So it was like telling, it was affecting my business because we not shared a business, but we had a similar business. You know, obviously the work I'm doing is very similar to spiritual growth, and he had helped me start that business. So it was like I didn't feel safe now in my business. I didn't feel safe with what he was saying to people. I had to let go of a bunch of clients. I wasn't doing well mentally because I'm trying to hold this down. And the feeling of unsafety because he felt unpredictable. So PTSD
Mhm.
got triggered, right? Um, so at the time, I had no idea what was going on. I felt like a bad person. Am I hurting him? Like I was taking it on, right? Like that I was actually being, maybe I am this awful, insensitive, uncaring, in, you know, whatever. I took on the beliefs, and I took on the judgment or the negativity and his lens of me. And so that was happening, and he'd even come into my apartment and left this scathing letter, so I didn't feel safe in my apartment
Wow.
either. So I was at the point where I'm like, do I have to call the police? Do I have to get a restraining order? All of this. So plus I'm trying to start a new relationship.
Yeah.
So that, and then I would say politically at the time, that was when the Me Too movement was happening. Donald Trump was getting into power, a lot of drama, and like talking about violence against women. Like all of these things were happening at the same time that felt like it was triggering, um, either triggering him or triggering me, or it was not helping, you know, of feeling like the world had become unsafe, and that there really wasn't anyone having my back in that. So all of those things piled on. It felt like a storm pile of just
Hmm.
like, and I would just say lack of safety and lack of support, not just, but that feeling of not really having, being able to, it wasn't safe enough to speak my truth. I didn't feel like even if I said no, he wouldn't listen. You know, I didn't have any power. Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I'd say that was the context around when it felt like I was like, this is, it's, and I would describe that as not that I don't think anybody wants to harm themselves. It's that you feel entirely powerless. Like it felt like it was, I had no, I couldn't control him. I couldn't set boundaries with my mom. I couldn't set boundaries with my colleagues, like without it turning into more of a nightmare.
Hmm.
Because if he found out, then I would get attacked by email. Like it was just no matter, even if I blocked him, he would try to find other ways into my email. Like it was just, there was no safety net or no safe space,
Right.
except for,
And everything you did triggered him and
yeah,
turned into something, right?
totally a hornet's nest of, and it lasted for 2.5 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Up
That is
and yeah.
a long time. Holy.
Yeah. And in various ways, like just infiltrating, and again, feeling like if I say something, I'm gonna come across like, you know, like it was like don't I'm not the bad guy here. You know, I'm trying to set boundaries without, so I wouldn't I wouldn't go to his space. You know, I was respectful. When you break up, you're supposed to respect another person's
Yeah.
you've got your friends, your family, like you do you, I do me, and that's
Yeah,
to me is the standards of breakup. Like if there's a code for breakup, it's,
that's generally how it works. Yes.
but that's not in his brain.
No.
So yeah, it was like the rug getting pulled, and then people are like, "Oh, poor guy, he's such a nice guy." I don't know, like I've hurt him because I've moved on. Like they thought I would cheated on him, and I
Um,
was like, and even if I had have, like, even if I had moved on to somebody else, it's nobody's business because they're not in the relationship,
right.
and it's nobody's business, right? That's like
Hmm.
slut shaming and all of this. So it was, and I'm like, I'm not the one at fault here. Like, I'm really not. I'm trying to be respectful
Hmm.
and as take the higher ground while moving on with my life and getting my needs met and creating a life I want. So it was like, I can only describe it as hoovering, like discovering that there was narcissistic personality disorder going on where he was hoovering me, which is like you're trying to drag the person back into the relationship, or you're trying to hook them and
Hmm.
bring them back in so they get attention, right? And he's trying to profess his love for me, and you're the only one I love. Like it was just freaky. It felt like a stalker who was obsessed with me and couldn't let go. And at the same, no matter if I said no, like no,
Right.
no, 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 no. I
Even though
wasn't
he was the one who said no in the first place.
7 times.
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
But
but it,
the if I can't have you, no one can.
exactly,
Right.
exactly.
I don't want you, but I don't want anyone else
I don't want anyone else to
to
have
have
you.
you either. Yeah.
No, because it's the male ego getting hurt.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I have a very like what it a deep, deep, deep empathy for the layers of violence against women and
Hmm.
how it shows up in the male psyche. And I don't, this isn't about male bashing, it's about an abusive male, or a male who hasn't done his work, and their lens of the female and their beliefs around what she's supposed to be for him, or how like he just believed that I was supposed to be something to him.
Right. Yeah.
And I had to take a look at even the most so-called enlightened person or person in personal growth. I'm like, I had to see the male side that still wanted control and power, and couldn't accept, through the guise of love, could not accept rejection, or could not accept a no, or couldn't accept a boundary.
Hmm. Which led you then
Mhm.
to thinking it'll just be easier for me to not be here
Yes. So,
than
and
to
I would
have to deal with all of this.
totally, well, and I would say
Especially
it's
after 2.5 years. Yeah. You're just ready
right.
to just give up.
So I'd say probably the suicidal feelings. It felt like, what did they call it? Intrusive thoughts.
Hmm.
Probably 3 or 4 months of this going on because it wasn't going to stop. Right.
Yeah.
So at the 3 or 4 month point, I felt like, oh my God, I'm trying really hard to move forward with my life, and this thing keeps pulling me back.
Hmm.
And so the suicidal feelings of, I just want to die. I just want to die. Like I can't, it had a feeling of, I have no, it'll always be this way.
Yeah. The
It'll always be
hopelessness.
this way.
Yeah.
I can't get rid of this person. And the damage he's caused or causing is hope, like I'll never regain my sanity, safety, and my own sense of trust. Like it broke trust at a deep, deep level. And if I couldn't, I was like, if I can't trust this person, like, and so it was challenging even being in this relationship because I'm trying to navigate a new relationship if I trust this person or not.
Hmm.
And then as a male, right? So it was bringing up all these layers of, and I have a background of dominant men in my life who I've had to stand up to and set ground with. So it triggered every single emotional uh, anger, is the only way I can describe it, and a feeling of um, self-hate for getting myself into this situation. Like I blamed
Oh,
myself,
right.
right? So
Well,
it was,
yeah, because
right?
I picked him. I chose to be in a relationship with him. So, this is all my fault, even though obviously his behavior and his choices are in no way your fault, but that's sometimes just where the
It's
brain
this
chooses to go.
It's what psychological abuse does, right? And
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
felt like it's better that I'm invisible. Like it's almost like a way of trying to be invisible from the abuser is like if I just ended it,
Hmm.
I would go away and this problem would go away,
Yeah.
right? And it honestly felt like it felt like intrusive thoughts, like reckless driving, not because I was like, I'm just going to end it now. It felt like I just had no control. Like it was like, it's gonna, like it felt like my script was, I want to die, I want to die, I want to die. But it wasn't like I was like planning it, right? And I totally get, I have no judgments of somebody planning it.
Right.
But it felt intrusive. It felt like there was no, like I'm gonna harm myself even if I want to or not, right? Like it felt like there was no, I didn't have control over my life, so I couldn't even control my driving. I had ideation of, and I'm sorry for triggers for people, but they're listening to this podcast. But it felt like knives on my arms, and I'm not somebody who's ever cut myself or been inclined to that. But I was like, I really get how people feel like they're having a psychotic break. Like I really get how they feel like, why is this even coming into my head? Like I don't even want it to come into my head.
Yep.
And yet the deepest depression, like I couldn't get up in the mornings. I felt like everything, I couldn't go through like, it would almost be like every hour or half an hour, be like, I just want to die. I just want to die. I just want to
Oh,
die. Right. And no, um, no control. Like it's like it couldn't not feel that way. Is the only way I
yeah.
could describe it, right? Um, and I think the worst part of it was that whenever I did reach out for help, I went to Women in Crisis when this was going on, but sometimes those programs can make you self-shame if you're already in an emotionally abusive relationship. So you're like, this is the cycle of abuse. I'm like, I know the cycle of abuse. I know it. I've done, I've been educated by it. I don't need the education. I'm in this. I don't know how to protect myself from somebody who is doing this. So it would be a lot of, it felt like it was up to me to, like I was somehow failing, or I was somehow like, instead of going, look, you're like it, lack of validation. It just feels like
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
like you're not at fault here. This dude is crazy. Like just help me identify that this is crazy.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like I'm dealing with a crazy person and what do I do? Like and I say that with capital C, harmful crazy. I don't want to mentally health shame anyone. And I know he was going through a mental health crisis, right? So they weren't helping me deal with like, look, of course you feel guilty, you feel responsible, you feel like you're hurting. Like none of that
Yeah. Just
acknowledgement of,
not being seen or heard or, yeah,
or get like you're
validated.
not weak because you're dealing with this, like,
Yeah.
keep let's unpack this, right? And
Yeah.
so it didn't help. I mean, I'm glad I had that as a space, but I didn't feel like I was the abused woman. I felt like I got caught in somebody's mental health crisis
Mm,
who, like, I'm not denying that he was an abusive male, but I was already leaving the relationship. I'd already left the relationship. I didn't
right.
think I needed an exit plan. I didn't think he'd go south,
Right.
like,
Right.
so it was like a different type of crisis. And so in it was, I forget where I was going with that. Oh, and then the other piece was I reached out to a mental health hotline, a distress hotline, and they were doing an intake and they said, oh, well, we'll have CMHA contact you to do an assessment on your level of
CMHA,
suicide.
sorry, being
CMHA, yes.
Canadian Mental
Canadian,
Health Association.
yes. Um, so we'll do an assessment of, how at risk are you, right? I was like, okay, I didn't hear from them at all until 2 years later.
Ugh.
And then when we did the intake, I said, well, now they're like, how often do you have suicidal feelings or you just want to die? And I was like, now it's about once a month that I feel like I want to die. But at the time, it was like,
2 years ago, it was
yeah,
every
like
half
almost like it was
hour.
every day, every half hour. And they're like, oh, okay, well, we failed you. Like they admitted it. We failed you.
Yeah.
Our system failed you. Glad you're getting help and you're feeling better. You don't need to come in. Like even with how they dealt with me saying I was feeling suicidal once a month wasn't even like it's like they didn't even red flag that. So,
Yeah, that's still, I would say, in the danger zone.
right? Or at least say, okay, can you please contact this organization? Or can
Yeah.
you like we
Steer
can't
you
bring you into our
somewhere else. If it's not dire or acute enough for them, where can you go?
like luckily I'm resourceful. Luckily I Google things. Luckily I will find free counseling if I can. Like I will do those things, but I was like, wow, their negligence on was for something that you would expect would
Yeah.
have more training on this.
Mhm.
So it confirmed that at the time, like I was in this crisis that felt out of control and I was reaching out for help. And when help isn't given, that's almost
It's
worse.
almost, well, yeah. And it just sort of feeds into that hopelessness because you're like, well, I guess there's no hope for me. There's no help out there for me.
I'm on my own.
I'm on my own. Yeah.
And I found this with a lot of, and I don't want to blame therapists or counselors or mental health model. I would just say that if anyone is in that field, the hard part is that I'm very articulate. I'm well read. So I come across like I'm not in crisis. Like I can explain what's going on in me,
Hmm.
and I'm not going "Whoa," like I'm not freaking out
Right.
physically,
Yeah.
right? And so there are a lot of people who they're like, this person's in crisis, but they won't see. I'm like the duck where my crisis is happening under the surface. And I will say to you, I am in crisis. Can you please believe me? And they're like, no, you don't look like you're in crisis. You have a shower.
Hmm.
Like I'm like, I am feeling like I want to die. I don't even know if this is whatever the term is, suicide ideation. I don't like I had to figure all those terms out for them to hear me. And I'm like, do you have to have a university degree in mental health to get help? Like, because it felt like there was a terminology that I couldn't convey to them that I'm in crisis. Like, what is, I don't know what is, I don't know why I'm in crisis. I'm not feeling happy to wake up in the morning. And I don't know how to explain these thoughts,
Yeah.
and, um, so not having like just a basic checklist or let's go through this. If you're saying in your crisis, I'm going to believe it, right? Instead of
Mhm.
just them assessing like, well, she can put sentences together. Like I'm like,
Oh,
so I have like a lot of therapists can't take me into the emotion or I'm like, can you please guide me? I'm just telling you what's going on. Please help me. So
yeah.
the curse of being a coach doing work, personal growth work is that you know the terminology or you know how to explain things in a calm way, but you need the person to facilitate the emotions.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what changed then? So over the course of 2 years,
Ah,
you went
oh
from,
God.
you know, thinking about wanting to die every half hour to
hmm
improving
hmm
to
hmm
once a month.
Yes. So
Um,
honestly, COVID was the best thing for me
oh,
because I didn't have to deal with the triggers of the outside world. Like I'm in my hometown, or if I would bump into people, I would be these reminders, right? I'd bump into
okay.
people who knew him or saw him or da da da, and
Mhm.
I'd hear stories about him or blah blah blah. So COVID
You're always
lockdown was
talking about him.
right. Now I'm
Hmm.
not saying like I would say it's not like everywhere. I mean he's just a dude, but it was enough in my small town that or small city, going downtown and bumping into people and music community and all this stuff. So I was like I'd get triggered every time I would just if I went downtown and bumped into somebody and somebody was and it just was a I didn't feel safe in my city or community. So it was actually COVID was the best thing for me because I had permission to stay at home. I had permission to not have to go out and engage so I could actually heal my nervous system.
Amazing.
So it was the best gift. I could go for nature walks. I didn't have to talk like definitely there was other dramas going on in the world and all this stuff, but I was
Sure.
like I don't need to. So and then on top of it, whatever was going on with him, I didn't hear about it. It's like it just kept
Yeah.
he somehow went off the radar for a period. And also that helps that he toned it down. Like every time I would keep saying, like blocking him or whatever, he wasn't as active. But I would get every time I would get something like he would he was trying to sue my psychotherapist
Oh my God.
or so again, another safe space, but it was a week before my wedding. So it felt like you knew my wedding date somehow and you planned this. So now a week before my wedding, I have to deal with anxiety,
Right.
right? Now a week before my wedding, but it was this notion of like, he tried to convince you to leave me, and it's like, like his last effort to get me to love him, I was like, but it threw everything upside. Like I was like, so I wasn't immune to the triggers.
Right.
It's just that the triggers went away, my wedding happened, and then luckily COVID happened. But it's like things as he wasn't my threat, right? Wasn't
Right.
as often. It
Right.
helped me to sort of calm down and get on with things. And then, but it's like the threat didn't go away. COVID helped it go away a lot more.
Right. Right.
And
And then
then
you were stuck at home with your new husband, which I'm sure didn't hurt either.
no, it worked. It worked. We got to enjoy. We're like, this could make us or break us.
Yep.
Thank goodness it made us. And yeah, so things could finally calm down, but it still was sitting there. The anxiety was still sitting there, and it would just come in, um, randomly. Like I'd just get overwhelmed randomly. Or if there was any kind of trigger going on in the news, then I'd be like, I'm like, I can't live like this. So I reached out to my doctor and I said, look, I think I need medication to get out of the cycle of chronic depression and anxiety. I said, I don't know
Mhm.
what's an option. So she's awesome. She's always been great. I've known her for decades, thankfully. And she did an intake, and I got I couldn't have asked for the perfect medication right away. Like I almost like immediately from taking it, the relief was there.
Amazing.
Um, so I know that isn't the case for some people when they're
Mm.
trying out medications. But I couldn't have, I was like, oh my God, like it's like it took the edge off so I could just keep going. Right.
Yeah.
So that was a huge, I would say that was sort of like um, the
It was sort
magic
of like
pill.
the circuit breaker.
And then my brain isn't as inundated with, I could just focus because I couldn't
Mhm.
focus. Right.
Yeah.
And so now I would say like I'm weaning off. I'm not at a high dose, but I still have issues with family dynamics. So I have to like monitor my triggers. And doing things like exercise, meditation didn't help. It made it worse sometimes. Partly because he was a meditation teacher and we did a lot of
Mm.
meditation together. So it took away my joy.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and I would say, so moving the body and working out the PTSD and working out the nervous system and trying to get good sleep without the flashbacks and so forth, that was, trying to find that body
Hmm.
rhythm and getting body work done.
Yeah. What type of body work did you do? And do you like? I
Mhm.
mean, obviously it's different for everybody what they enjoy the most and what works for them, but
Yeah, well, I would say because of everything that happened, it also created chronic back pain for me. So I
mm,
had to go to see a chiropractor and a massage therapist.
okay.
And then I would say going to the gym that I went to had a steam room and a sauna. So doing heat therapy
Mm, mhm.
helped with
Nice.
relaxing the muscles, feeling nurtured.
Yeah.
And same with the massage, feeling nurtured, and then the chiropractic helped with like everything was almost like how I was holding my body and twisting my body and sleeping at night. It was all knotted. So that really like she was like, "Oh my gosh, you're just like a big pretzel," and I'm like, "Yeah, I just can't." Like everything about me was contracting and was almost like trying to like I can almost describe it as trying to like hide
Right.
and trying to die essentially because it wasn't safe. Like I couldn't be
Yeah.
open
So
and
you're
relaxed.
trying to curl up into a fetal position to protect yourself,
Yeah,
and your body wants to be in that position. So
exactly.
it's literally doing that.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
going into its pretzel, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I would say, and finding the holistic practitioners that I felt comfortable with, because definitely through COVID times, you got people in the drama and the politics. So I had to like cut off some of the people where I'm like, I just don't feel safe with you. So I
Yeah.
need to find my safe people and I need to find my safe therapies and my safe places. So I had to find new places to walk in my journey and, that didn't have any memories with my ex. Um, and find my own outlets, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talk a lot, people who everybody, I'm not going to say does the same thing, but we obviously we work on our mental health and seek medication or
Hmm.
therapy or all of those things, meditation. Um, but we don't often talk about how our mental struggles
Mm-hmm.
can manifest in our bodies. And
So
so I
much.
love that you're like, yeah, like I
Mm-hmm.
also did body work to help release all of
Yeah.
that tension, anxiety, even
Yeah.
the hopelessness and the depression, like everything we store in our bodies
Oh
and
God, yeah.
feeling it. So yeah, also sort of and it's the same thing, body, mind, spirit, it's all intertwined.
So
So you
connected.
can't just work on one and not the other.
No, no. And
And yeah.
especially with PTSD, like especially because I would say suicide and suicidal ideation is an extreme, you're at such an extreme form of PTSD. You're feeling like deep depression, you're feeling threatened, like it's life or death, right? Like
Mhm.
you're at that point. So if you've gone through that, the need to look at, and even if it's not identified or diagnosed that way, to really take a look at what are the treatments to recover from PTSD. And usually it's body based, like it's a lot of like opposite arm, opposite leg movement. So the elliptical, walking, running, swimming is also a really good one.
Mm.
So you're trying to reprogram your brain and you're trying to get your, like I found when I was going through this crisis, I was all like, I was clumsy. Like I dropped things all the time. I could lose my keys. Like my brain was not even functioning,
Yeah.
right? Like body coordination was gone. I'm like, I can't even, every time I'd be like, and then everything would fall and I would slip and I would get, um, I would tumble on things. Like I couldn't do that. So it's very much a brain body illness because literally your spirit's leaving your body's going, I just want to die. And your brain's going, yep, let's shut down. So you have to re-nurture your nervous
Realign
system.
your brain body connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And deep breathe, like the deep breathing of just slow, deep breathing can do wonders for helping your body and yourself feel safe, right?
Yes.
Like shallow breathing is when you're like you think of an animal and they're just like that's panic, right?
Yeah.
Versus when it's deep, it's like everything is settled, everything is calm. Even if it's not, you're tricking yourself, right?
Right. Yeah, by doing
Yeah.
those slow deep breaths, we trick our brain into being like, "Oh, we're relaxed now?"
Yeah. There's no threat. There's no threat.
There's no threat. Even.
Totally. Totally. It is the I think you have to do that with your body when you're going through that or recovering from it. And
Yeah.
the massage with like, and again, like I had it where I was having panic attacks and
Mhm.
I had to get like an EKG because my doctor wanted to make sure it wasn't a heart issue. And even when he puts like a device here over the heart, I was having a panic attack from that. He's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, it was the feeling and because it was male, it felt I was triggered by a male, and I'm like, I'm not this person. I'm like, I can usually discern between like who's safe and who isn't, but my
Right.
body was like male coming close to my chest area. And I hadn't even been physically harmed by my ex, but
Right.
emotionally harmed, like everything had been feeling like a sexual violation because it was an
Mm,
intimate partner violence,
right.
right? And so, and I would speak on like I think I would say intimate partner violence is probably there's so many forms of betrayal and so many forms of violence that are terrible, but I would say it's right up there with like the one of the worst types of violence because you shared your intimate vulnerable self with somebody who completely like destabilized you. It's the worst. um like you trusted this person with the core of your being.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it makes like it's the trust issues of going out and then going, well, if I trusted this person and they did this to me, why can't, and it's very subconscious, why I can't trust somebody else, right? I can't trust another male. I can't trust, how do I know this person's telling me who they say they are? Like it makes you not suspicious, but very, very mistrustful, very, very like from a body nervous system perspective.
Right. Right.
Yeah, like it doesn't make sense, but your brain is like threat, threat, threat.
Yeah.
hmm
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say something and I was like, I'm not gonna obviously not gonna interrupt her. And now I can't remember what I was gonna
Shoot.
say. Oh well,
Talking too much.
I guess it wasn't that important. But
Panic attacks, body wellness,
yep.
threat to
Yeah,
my
it was
partner. Mhm.
something to do with all of those things.
Yeah, so I feel for anybody who's struggling. I get it. I really get how I'd say the things that kept me going were very, my husband, who's my husband now, but my partner at the time was very compassionate, very validating. Like he could see it clearly. He's like, you just tell me what you need. Like he didn't abandon me. He didn't say I was nuts. He didn't go, oh my God, I'm dating a crazy lady with an ex. Like he didn't do any of that. He's like, no, I trust you. I believe you. I see you. I see what's good about you. And it's not that, of
Mhm.
course you have to find that within yourself, but if you feel like you don't have a lot of people in your corner, that was huge, right?
Absolutely.
And it wasn't out of rescuing, and it wasn't out of he needed to be the hero and all this stuff. He just was like, no, he understood that journey of suicide from a family member for him. And so his compassion and his empathy is what kept me grounded.
Beautiful.
And I knew, like, if he sees this in me and he wants this really, I'm like, this is my chance of having a loving relationship. Like, this is what I was looking for. I don't want to throw this away. And I also knew that he had suicide trauma in his family. I'm like, I wouldn't want to do that to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like the thought of like, oh my God, like that would be the worst thing to do to this man. And I absolutely like I really, I fell in love with him. So I was like, that would be the thing that stopped me. Like if I was all on my own and to my own resources, I don't know what would have happened. It would have been It would have been a car accident. It would have been harming myself from falling down the stairs. It would have been something out of control.
Hmm.
I also drank too much. I was self-medicating through alcohol, and because the anxiety was just like,
Hmm.
so I totally get how people turn to addiction and turn to
Right.
um, self-harming tendencies, even if they don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just don't feel you feel like something else is in control.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're just trying all the things to see what helps. And
Yeah.
especially when it seems like nothing helps, right?
Yes.
You're like, oh, well,
Yes.
maybe more of some of these things will help. And of course, they don't.
Yeah.
And alcohol being a depressant really does not help us come out of the depression.
It'll make it worse.
But, sometimes at the time, it's just the escape that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that
It's what you
is
needed.
what you need.
Totally.
Or what
Totally.
what you want, not what you need.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Or it's just your body's crave, like it's like a impulse, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't even um it seems like it's the answer. It's the escape. It's the answer. It feels like like it shuts down like for me, it was like it also shut down the memories that kept coming in, like the
Mm,
PTSD
mhm.
memories and the intrusive memories and the
Right?
intrusive thoughts. So it quieted that because
Okay.
I couldn't, meditation made it worse.
Right.
And so I would say if anybody's going like, why can't I meditate? And everyone can meditate, and it makes me more anxious. And I'm like, it's
It does happen
perhaps.
sometimes. It's not a cure all, be all, end all for everybody.
And I had it was so associated with my ex, it made it
Yeah.
worse. Like it was like it just so it's like try to find the healthy outlets for turning your mind off. Like if it is music, if it is dancing, if it is,
Yeah.
if going away on a vacation, like if that's gonna help like to separate from the triggers, right, is the important piece.
Yeah. I like walking meditation. So, I mean, because that way you're also moving your body, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, in that sort of opposites
Mm-hmm.
fashion. But when you're walking, you're just noticing things consciously, like, oh, look, there's a red bird.
Yeah.
And oh,
Right.
look at I don't know, the doorknob on that house or
Right.
the
Right.
leaves on the trees as you go by. But you're just noticing things as you pass them. And that way you're not thinking, you're not lost in your thoughts. You're
Yes.
looking at the things and you don't have to talk to yourself out loud, although sometimes that works.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
just noticing the things as you're passing them, and that keeps you really present
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and out of this,
The brain. Yeah.
the brain stuff. that you don't want to
Yeah.
be thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can see that there's a whole world around you. The senses are being stimulated.
And if you do the same route, then you start like I used to do the same route around my neighborhood.
Mm.
And
Oh,
then you're like,
cool.
oh, different times of the year, the gardens
Yep.
would change, things would happen, or somebody would get a new front door, or they'd paint the trim, or get new siding,
Yes.
or, like totally stupid, mundane things. But you notice them, and then,
Yeah.
something is always changing, even if you're doing the same route all the time when you're
Mm-hmm.
noticing all those little things.
And then
There's
you have
always something to look at.
familiarity, like your body's feeling the familiarity, yet at the
Yeah.
same time you're getting
Yeah.
stimulated. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
great. I think the familiarity piece, it's when everything is turning upside down or you feeling disoriented, which
Yeah.
again, everybody's different reasons for feeling suicidal come in differently. Like you can feel trapped, but then you can also I'm sure some feel like their world, they don't recognize it anymore. Everything feels dissociated. And so, being able to find a space of grounding and familiarity and safety through just simple, like I found myself going back to my old teenage neighborhood. Like I live in
Mm.
the same city as where I grew up. I moved places, but I kept coming back. But I found myself being drawn to, I'm going to go to Value Village and I'm just going to go and shop because this I remember from my teenagehood, or well, I say my 20s, but I remember this is my neighborhood I grew up in. This is my familiar zone. This is my a home space. He's not infiltrating the space. I won't bump into him, so not
Yeah.
out of fear of him, but just out of finding that those places that feel like home,
Comfort. Yeah.
right? Yeah, totally. It's it definitely, and so when you're speaking of that in your own neighborhood and getting that same route, and I think subconsciously it creates a feeling of like I have home, I have normal, I have safety, I have things are familiar. You start probably seeing similar neighbors,
Yep. Yeah.
like friendly people. It's like you're wanting to see people who see the best in you and you want to see people who don't know you based on the crisis.
Right. Right.
Yeah. 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 It's important. It's important. Like, you have to find, because I think it's a really dark place. Like you're in such a dark place of you can't see your goodness and you can't see hope, that you need normal. Like you need normalcy. You need people who go, hey, everything's going to be okay. And, or life, there's more to life than this. Like you need to have those smiles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
The
Okay.
village.
The village. Yes. Well, thank you for being part of our Phoenix Wisdom Village
Yes.
and
Thank you for
being here
listening.
today and
And
sharing your
yeah,
story. I appreciate you.
thank you. I appreciate, I'm so glad that neither one of us ended it, or
Me too.
anybody who's listening has ended it. So there is, I'm going to say beyond there's hope, there's always another corner. You
Yes.
know?
Yes, there is.
Hmm. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for doing this. All right.
Awesome.
Um, Gosh, today my brain is just not the thoughts are flying through really quickly. So we'll just say thank you once again and end this.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you for listening. Remember that you are loved, you are worthy, you are valuable, you are meant for more, and that it really does get better. If you are in crisis, there are numbers that you can call or text to get the help that you need. That information for Canada and the US is in the description below each episode. If you are in immediate crisis, please call 911. We love you, and I hope you'll listen again.